and welcome to my channel Inch by Inch Art. Today I'm going to be going over my punch needle supplies and materials, and I'll be doing a bit of a review. This is the first piece I ever made. It was of a gecko. I just used a bunch of scrap materials that I had to give this a try. I was trying to keep it affordable for my learning process. First I'm going to review my Lavore punch needles. They are all adjustable depth. The first one is a small adjustable punch needle. It comes with 3 needle sizes, a 2, 2.5, and 3 millimeter. The pros of this needle are it has a recycled plastic handle, multi-widths which can be used on multiple size pieces. It's very easy to use for a beginner. It has adjustable depth for multiple effects. It's great for fine yarn and even down to embroidery thread, and it's very affordable. I spent only $25 on this. The cons, it does not have a set adjustment depth, so it's impossible to switch from different depths to get the same length twice. It's just a very smooth needle. As you can see here, I'm struggling with trying to unscrew it, so I would say that that's a con, that it's very difficult to get the screw tight enough with just your hand so that it won't slip. I use pliers to get mine tightened and untightened. And if you don't do something about it, either having it very tight or do what I did here, which is use a file to put notches in, it will slip, which means that your thread will definitely not be the depth that you want. Generally, the hard pushing shouldn't be too much of a problem. I think that because I was using even weave, which isn't a normal fabric used for needle punching, that it caused more resistance on the needle, but I did find there were times, even on other linens, if I was using more than 2-ply yarn, it was enough resistance that the needle would slip. Here I'm just showing that you can do different depths with the different needles. It is kind of nice that you can go up and down in the different fabric size with the different needles, but overall I found that I preferred this next needle much more. So this is a Lavore adjustable chunky punch needle. It's just one large needle that has 6 pile depth notches. You can see them here. Pros, again, recycled plastic handle. It can handle 8-ply to 16-ply yarn, which is great for things like rugs and chunkier pieces. The depths snap into place due to the notches. It does have a pretty fat handle. It's affordable. I only spent $28 for this, and it's very easy to use for a beginner. Cons, it's really only good for thick threaded pieces and using fabric that can handle a large needle, and it has a relatively short handle. So you can see I used it on my Homer punch rug piece, which had the depth set to the longest to get that long loop for the bush effect. And then I set my needle to the shortest depth to do Homer's body so that he would have a very crisp look. It's very easy to change the adjustment. You just twist it and push along the needle and then twist again and it locks in. Next, I'm going to go over the fabrics that I have. This first one is burlap. I use this the most often because it is cheap and easy to find. It is quite rough, and it's really only good for bigger than 4-ply yarn most of the time. It doesn't last forever, but reviews have said that it lasts about 15 years, which is fine by me. Next, I've got some linen. This is 14 count. It is soft, good with smaller needles, and holds 4-ply yarn really well. And finally, I have some monk's cloth. It is pretty expensive. It handles 8-ply and higher yarn really well. It's soft, comes in a lot of different sizes, and it self-repairs quite well, which I'll demonstrate here in a second. So this is my chunky Lavore needle. You can see I've pressed a hole in, and I just wiggle the fabric around a little bit, and it heals, self-repairs really quickly, really easily. Not all the fabrics do this. Burlap has some difficulty doing it. Even weave barely does it at all. It's quite stiff. And linen does it if you have the right size needle and thread. So I'm about to show that with this linen. Going back to my small Lavore needles, and I'm going to use the smallest one because this one was particularly used for embroidery. just gonna press a few holes in here, and you'll see that as I press the next hole, the one before it is disappearing. That's because it is doing that self-closure behind it, which is good. That means that it's the right size needle for the fabric. Next, I'm moving on to frames. So as you saw, this is my first piece. This is just a thick wooden frame from a picture. I went to the junkyard. There's a shop here where they pull out things that are still usable. And I got these wooden frames and just ripped the old junk canvas off the front. I think they cost me $2 each. And then I staple whatever fabric I'm going to use for my punch needle onto the front. You can also use carpet tack instead of a stapler. I just happen to have a staple gun and I don't really like the idea of little nails pointing out towards me, so I use that instead. Here you can see I'm putting together what's known as a snap frame, sometimes called a Q frame or a PVC frame. Pros for this are it's really easy to store and lightweight. It doesn't have any additional parts needed to secure a piece, so no staples are needed for this. And you can make more if you're handy. It's also really quick and easy to mount the fabric. Cons are it has quite a few pieces, so they can be easy to lose if you're not careful and keep them in a good stored place. It is a bit more expensive to purchase if you get it from a specialty store. I think they're around $30, but I happen to get this for $5 as a second hand. And you may need to order it from a specialty store if you can't find the supplies at a hardware store of some sort that has PVC supplies. The clips, like I'm using right here, you can find them used for greenhouses. They will be green in color, but it's the same principle where it's a PVC clip that wraps tightly onto a PVC pole with some sort of fabric in the middle. Here you can see I'm just trying to put the piece together. It does unsnap sometimes. I suppose that could be a con, but I just assume that that's me not being super skilled with it still. But when you go to put your fabric on, you just lay it over the top, take your clips and put them towards the front of each side and do alternating sides first. When you snap it on, you're going to want to rotate the two clips out and away from each other towards the bottom. This will automatically make your fabric more taut. And that's what I'm doing here. This I found is really good for me in particular. I happen to have some nerve damage from an old work injury that makes staple guns and things like even just the little twisting the screw on the Lavore punch needle quite difficult for me. So I found that this PVC frame, because it's soft and smooth, was quite easy for me to use and took less time and didn't hurt my wrists as much. I'm just twisting those clips to make it taut. And here's the two different frames side by side. They're the same size, both 2 foot by 2 foot. One's staple on wood and the other's the PVC. That's it for me. If you enjoyed this and want to see more of me doing my art, please like, follow, and subscribe.